Yeah, awesome. Glad we got that figured out. So, Annabelle, I hope you can pin the speakers the right way. So yeah, none of you need an introduction to Congressman Pramila Jayapal, a progressive champion in the House for us in Congressional District 7, a consistent champion of immigrants' rights. I'm sure we'll discuss that a little bit, of putting people first. And thanks so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to give us an update on what's happening in the other Washington.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thanks to everybody in the 43rd. I just want to first say that I'm thinking about all of you and whatever anxieties you're dealing with, whether it's, loss of work and paychecks, or whether it's dealing with illness or uncertainty. These are really difficult times. And I guess I feel like that's the first thing I want to start with in saying. This is unprecedented. I mean, we have every state in the country having declared a disaster declaration. We have lost more than 40,000 American lives. That's more than we lost in 19 years of war in Afghanistan combined. And so, as we deal with this virus, and I was on the phone with the governor this morning on a delegation call, we are not through this. The reality is that we are seeing a plateau, but we have not seen a decline in cases, which we had really hoped to see by now. And so I am getting on a plane tomorrow to go back to DC to vote on this next sort of half a coronavirus package. And I got to tell you, we are doing our best, and Democrats are really pushing hard for real relief to people. But we have continued to be blocked by the Trump administration. And the reality is that we should be putting lots of money into state and local governments. I know I see a number of our state legislators on the phone and in this meeting, and we are grateful to state legislators for what they're doing, and to our mayor and county exec. But the reality is, we're not giving you enough to work with. This is an enormous crisis, and our responses to date have not met the scale of the crisis. So 22 million people who have now filed unemployment claims. You all know that the state's unemployment insurance system crashed on Sunday. That is not due to lack of incredible work and effort by Commissioner LaValle. Our systems are not built to deal with this kind of a crisis. And so I believe that we have to propose things that are bold and that go beyond perhaps what we can even wrap our heads around. And so that's what I'm going to be pushing to do. The package that we're going to vote on tomorrow includes more money for the Paycheck Protection Program. It has good principles in it, but I have heard from all of my constituents that it is not serving the needs of too many people. It is not getting money to the unbanked. It is not getting money to people who are not high on the list of the banks that are out there. It is in the form of a loan. And so I have some nonprofits and businesses that are saying to me, Congresswoman, I got the approval, but I'm not going to take it because I can't guarantee that this is going to not be a loan at the end of the day. And I can't guarantee that it's going to continue and I'm going to be able to keep my employees on paychecks. And so this has been a real problem. The stimulus checks are just starting to arrive, but my office is overloaded with calls from constituents who haven't been able to get their stimulus checks. And so we are working very hard, and I want you all to know that anybody who has problems should call our office. We are available to walk you through what is available to you and how to navigate some of the tough situations that are out there. I just unveiled 2 weeks ago something called the Paycheck Guarantee Act. It would stop mass unemployment by guaranteeing paychecks and benefits to keep people on payroll, all businesses, all nonprofits, and state and local governments, so that we can ensure that people get the paychecks they need to survive. And that would be 100% of wages for workers earning salaries of up to 100,000. It would go straight from Treasury using payroll companies to deliver the relief. I spoke with, I have gotten an endorsement from the most unlikely people, but former Fed Reserve Chair Janet Yellen has given an enthusiastic endorsement. Nobel Prize winning economist Joseph Stiglitz has endorsed, and we have been working with a number of people to push this proposal forward. Speaker Pelosi has said that she will consider this in for the next CARES Act package. And so I hope that we can pass something like this, because unless we stave off mass unemployment in the way that Germany and Denmark and other countries have been able to do, we are not going to meet the scale of this crisis. And it isn't just an economic proposal. It is also a public health proposal, because if we are to beat this virus, then we have to keep people home. And if we are to keep people home and stop businesses from going back to work too quickly before public health guidance allows it, we have to be able jails that are there every night, and the vast majority of them have never committed a crime, much less been charged of a crime. So my bill would allow those people to be released. First, the immediate release of vulnerable populations over 50 and under 21, but then a case-by-case review based on public safety to release many of the others. Remember that these folks are in detention, often awaiting an asylum ruling, or they've received their asylum positive determination, but they don't have the bond money to actually get out. And so we think we could release up to 80% of the people in immigration detention centers with this bill. And we would stop ICE enforcement during this period, and we would ensure that whoever's left is able to physically distance and at least have basics like soap and water. So that's a very important proposal that I am moving forward. And I will just say that, people in jails and detention centers and prisons, they depend on the government for every single thing. Some people depend on the government for some things, but folks that are incarcerated depend on us for every single thing. Speaking to the is just around the corner, and I know it's going to take place virtually, and I hope to be able to join in. As many of you know, this is a top priority for me to protect LGBTQ rights. Some of you know that I was proud to talk about during a congressional hearing my child being gender nonconforming, and I've been on the front lines of fighting for folks who are LGBTQ, and so I'm going to continue to do that. I recently co-signed a letter to Airbnb about the specific challenges that the LGBTQ community face during COVID-19, especially college students who don't have welcoming homes to return to, discrimination in hiring or obtaining unemployment insurance or other areas of support. And I've been using my campaign side to raise money, including, I was so proud to be able to raise over $10,000 for Outright fundraising for their COVID-19 Global LGBTQ Emergency Fund. I can't finish my comments here before we move to questions without bringing you up to speed on the climate crisis, as tomorrow is Earth Day, and this is a top priority for me. The United Nations website states that without drastic action, issues like shifting weather patterns that threaten food production, rising sea levels that increase the risk of catastrophic flooding, become increasingly difficult to manage tomorrow. And so we are seeing a tiny, tiny, tiny silver lining in that global emissions around the world have gone down as people have sheltered in place. The question is, can we take that little opening and can we make sure that we transition now, use this as an opportunity as we invest in infrastructure, which has to happen quickly as a way to bring the economy back into recovery? Can we transition to a green economy and renewable energy and actually address the climate crisis and use this momentum that we may have seen, this tiny little bit of momentum that we may have seen to address climate justice and climate change around the world, and certainly here in our home state. There's many other things to talk about. I've also introduced a Housing as a Human Right Act, and I will have an op-ed on homelessness in the Seattle Times. I think it's running this week. I'm not sure. And I have been continuing to work on that front. We are also pushing the needs of essential workers, making sure that essential workers who are out there, whether it's our postal service workers, our grocery workers, our frontline healthcare workers, making sure that they have the necessary PPE and also hazard pay, a recognition of the fact that they are out there doing this work so that we can be here at home sheltering in place. So there's much more to talk about, but I do want to hear from you. And I would like to ask you for your endorsement from the 43rd Legislative District. I hope you've seen that I have been striving to be a champion for bold progressive ideas. I am the elected co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and so I bring not only my voice to these issues, but the voices of 100 members of our caucus, and that we have been trying to serve our constituents in every tangible way possible, bringing money back to people, advocating for the priorities of the district, and pushing forward to a more just and equitable future. So I hope I can earn your endorsement again. I do have a Republican challenger, and I don't know who else is going to file, but obviously it would mean so much to me to get that endorsement. Thank you so much, and back to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Congresswoman. You dropped out for a little bit there in the middle, and yep, it was very brief. But I think it was right when you were talking about immigration and the Trump's immigration ban that he's threatening, and there are some questions, it looks like, about whether what is the response to that? Because I think a lot of people see that as a distraction from the failures. So.
Yeah, well, let me say to that, I tweeted last night about it. My first reaction was to tweet, "This is bonkers," but I got a slightly more dignified tweet out there. And I coordinated with Mayor Durkin and Executive Constantine and Lorena Gonzalez on this as well to put out a statement. We don't know exactly what this is. I think this was a response to Tucker Carlson and others on Fox News. But we are looking at the details. We're not even sure that he has the ability to do this. And we're thinking this is actually going to cause any significant changes in policy, or whether this is another way to just scapegoat immigrants, which we know he's been doing for a long time. So we will keep a close eye on it. At this moment, he's saying that healthcare workers, because we have a lot of folks coming over from Canada, as well as essential food supply workers, because as you know, we have a lot of immigrants who have been excluded from all the packages, but are essential workers. And it's so hypocritical that we exclude them from our relief, but we still call them essential, and we expect them to pick the food that is on our table and in our food banks. So we are paying attention to this. We are denouncing his move because it's hurtful no matter how you look at it. But we also are being aware that the devil is in the details, and we're still assessing to see what kind of real damage he can do other than the psychological damage and the continual scapegoating, which is significant, but just from a policy perspective.
Definitely. Then thanks for pushing back on that. I'm going to try and combine a few of these questions that we've gotten. And you kind of touched on it, that it seems like all these relief bills that go through, they have, it's not a problem to get aid for small businesses, for those who are well connected or they're well set up. We're seeing big chains get this aid. And how are you balancing getting aid to folks that need it with this idea that I don't understand why it's a democratic win to get funding for hospitals or for testing or for our states and local governments? How do you make that choice, and what are you considering when you're making that vote?
Yeah, I mean, the packages so far have been an easier decision because they included a lot of our democratic priorities, and we understand that we have a Republican Senate and President Trump who really does not care about any of these things. Tomorrow's vote, or actually Thursday's vote, is going to be more difficult, and I have not decided what to do on it. I may end up voting for it because it does have some money for testing. But I got to tell you, I am frustrated. I have said the same to our leadership. I am trying to work productively on bold proposals. If I do vote for it, it will be with the belief that there is some commitment to another CARES Act package. But we had a Progressive Caucus call the other day and a press conference, and many of my members in the caucus are incredibly frustrated with both the process and the result. And so I think this is a challenge because, sure, there's some good that's in here. I know that there are small businesses that are saying that the PPP ran out of money, but I will tell you that I have spoken to a number of economists who do not think that the PPP is going to solve anything. It is not bold enough. It is not big enough. We are trying to use systems that are from, in some cases, the 50s, in other cases, maybe the 70s or the 80s, to respond to a crisis that is in 2020 and massive. We'll see what the unemployment numbers are on Thursday, but almost every economist that I have spoken to, including Joseph Stiglitz, including Gabriel Zuckman and Emmanuel Saenz at Berkeley, are telling me directly, I mean, these are conversations I am having directly with them, and they are telling me that we are going to likely quickly reach depression era levels of unemployment. So we have got to figure this out, and we've got to be bolder than we have been in the past. And so that is why I'm continuing to push these proposals. I sometimes feel like I'm getting a good workout because I feel like I'm pushing a giant boulder up a mountain. But those of you who know me know that's my history, and I actually feel like we're getting momentum on this, and I have some hope that perhaps we can achieve some greater response and assistance in the next CARES Act package. But there is a point at which the economy goes into such a downward spiral that it's difficult to pull us back. And I wake up every morning and I actually consciously look at the numbers of deaths in the country, because I think that we cannot close our eyes to that are piling and forget the real toll on families across this country, particularly Black and brown folks. I guess I just have to say one other thing, because I'm the Medicare for All champion in the House. I've been pushing for universal health care. I just want to say this. If we had had a Medicare for All system, a comprehensive universal health care system, we would have had a much easier time in centralizing our response, making sure that everybody got the testing and treatment they needed. But in addition to that, I don't believe we would be seeing the fatalities of Black and brown folks, disproportionate fatalities of Black and brown folks that we're seeing across the country today. Those are the people that are most likely to not be insured and to have delayed their treatment for chronic health diseases, to be living in toxic dumps or by the highways. And those are the exact conditions that put you at risk for COVID. So when you look at Chicago, 71% of fatalities in Chicago are African American. You look at Milwaukee County, 81% of fatalities in Milwaukee County, same numbers in Louisiana. And that's if they're collecting the numbers. The toll on folks who were already at the bottom of the pile before this crisis, 60% of Americans didn't have $400 in their bank account even before the crisis. We are going to have to do a lot of work to ensure that we just aren't going back to stasis. It's going to be worse than that, but to put in place structural changes that allow us to have a more equitable future.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. I guess we can end on one more question. We are a political organization here. We have a lot of volunteers who call in to Wisconsin or Arizona or wherever the next swing state is. I've heard from our people who are concerned about not having a fair election in November. And people don't want to tell people to go vote if those people who are voting are putting themselves at risk. So what can be done to ensure we have fair elections this fall? And then there was another question about what we here in Washington can do. We have a fantastic Congresswoman here. What can we do to help you advance these priorities?
Yeah, awesome. Well, on the elections, we have four main priorities for the next COVID package, relief package, in the Progressive Caucus. And the fourth one is elections and ensuring that we can move to a vote by mail system for the 2020 elections, and putting $3.6 billion into our election system so that states can transition. Obviously, Washington State is in a good place around this. That's why we had record turnout. Thank you, 43rd, for your work on ensuring that in the primary. And that was right as COVID was hitting us, right? So we really are a model for many other states, but many states are not in this position. My co-chair, Mark Pocan, is from Wisconsin, and they were really hard hit, even though they won some incredible races there. But this is a big priority for us. I know it's a priority for the speaker. In terms of what people can do, my campaign, obviously, we are using our campaign. We've had a year-round organizing effort. We knocked on doors. We made phone calls. We obviously can't knock on doors until we're to do that again. But we are going to continue to mobilize around key races across the country. So if people want to volunteer, if they want to help us to do that. Our campaign also supports frontline members in different states across the country. So I use my campaign to do that. I would really appreciate more volunteers, more folks who want to get trained, so that we can do whatever virtual work we need to do. But I have a lot of colleagues in swing districts that we are helping. And I personally have put a lot of time into helping to lift up progressive, particularly women of color, but progressive candidates across the country. So I have a number of different efforts, including a Medicare for All PAC that helps and trains candidates who are running on Medicare for All. We will have a race in Washington State to fill Denny Heck's position. I'm sorry to lose Denny. We have a chance to get a really progressive member into that district, and I hope to be able to work on that. And I would love help on that. Obviously, it's going to be a Democrat, but we can get a really progressive Democrat into that district. And of course, we'll continue to work on making sure that Kim Schreier stays in place and that we elect Carolyn Long in Vancouver. So would love your help and would love to have people engaged in our efforts to mobilize around November. And of course, supporting Vice President Biden and getting Donald Trump out of the White House. That is absolutely 100% necessary and a top priority.
Yeah, I think you speak for all of us in sharing that. So yeah, thanks so much for joining us. Is there anything you want to end on, or?
No, I just want to say that I'm sorry I can't be there in person, and I'm just really grateful. And I want to give a special shout out to all the state legislators and any other elected officials that may be on the call for all the work that they are doing, and just so proud to represent the 43rd and so proud to represent the 7th Congressional District. Thanks for the honor of that.
Yeah, and we're proud to have you as a representative. So thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Great. So I hope that worked out well for everybody. So up next, we have our 43rd State Representative, Nicole Macri, who I saw on the call earlier. Nicole, are you there?
Hi, Scott, and hey. Everybody from the 43rd. It's great to be back at a 43rd meeting after a long hiatus after session. And it's strange times to be doing it online. But thanks so much for having me. So I wanted to give you an update on kind of state action related to the coronavirus emergency, and then have a little conversation with folks. So we ended the legislative session on March 13th, on March 12th, and on that day, and and returned home on the 13th. And on the last day of session, we were able to pass virus disaster relief fund, transferring $200 million out of the rainy day fund to ensure that the governor and his team had a head start with some cash on hand to respond immediately to needs. Almost all of those resources have already been committed and expended, but it has been incredibly helpful for the state to have some resources to respond to everything from small business immediate support to helping to stand up our unemployment system, to providing resources out to all the counties responding to COVID amongst the homeless population, to providing support for people facing food insecurity and more. So that has been good, and I think what has put Washington State in a good position to respond early to the crisis that hit us before any other state. And since then, the legislature has not been in session. So the attention has really turned to the executive branch for the responses that they have put in place. But I do want to say that there has been strong communication and collaboration across the executive and legislative branches. And legislators have been working closely with the governor and his team as they roll out a number of resources and proclamations to ensure safety and a strong public health response. I do think that Washington State has been, in many ways, leading the nation in its public health response, and I think we are fortunate in the Department of Health leadership that we have had in that regard. And all of the responses that we have had in Washington really have put public health at the center for all of the policy planning that we've been doing. And I'm grateful to the governor and Secretary John Weisman from Department of Health for their leadership in doing that. You probably won't be surprised to learn that I have spent a lot of my time since the end of session really focused on the housing justice and housing security needs of Washingtonians, and that started before session even ended, when the calls to our office began from people who were losing their jobs and very concerned about their ability to retain their homes as a result. And even before session ended, I met with the governor to ask him to first and foremost put a moratorium on all evictions in place, and to think about other protections for people to ensure they can stay in their homes, which he did do shortly after we left Olympia, kind of in the middle of March. And since then, I've been working with stakeholders, both tenants and landlords, and my colleagues in the House and Senate to understand the impacts of housing insecurity around the state. We organized a legislative sign-on letter and worked with advocates to ask the governor to extend the eviction moratorium and put a number of additional protections in place, including prohibiting any late fees or other fees related to rental agreements, freezing any rent increases, and making sure that we end no cause terminations of leases, including lease agreements that have a termed end, like a 12-month lease, to ensure that those can be extended and people can't be asked to have to move out. And as well to put in protections for small business commercial leases for folks who've been impacted by the COVID-19 crisis, either because they have been required to close or otherwise have lost revenue as a result of the crisis. And the governor to his great credit, did do, I think, all of those things, which has really put Washington at the forefront of the kinds of protections it's putting in place. Also, understanding that these impacts can roll down, especially to our small landlords, put in place protections around additional protections beyond the federal ones around mortgage forbearance. And so we have been working hard on that. I do want to say right now we're pivoting to thinking about the economic impacts and what the world will look like once the eviction moratorium is lifted. And as you know, I've worked a lot on policy in Olympia to add additional protections, particularly for renters and for vulnerable homeowners around housing security. Some of those are included in the governor's proclamation, but are not in Washington state statute. And so we will be revisiting those. As to whether or not those kinds of policies will be brought forth in a special session, if we're called back for special session before January, or something we take up in the 2021 session, is still under consideration. We, though, now are really thinking about the extent to which people are going to need support to retain housing, as well as continued support generally. We have seen calls for people, of course, you've heard about the dramatic increases in unemployment claims, unprecedented in the history of our state. We've also seen unprecedented increases in applications for TANF and SNAP or food stamp benefits, as well as calls for rental assistance. So our office is working in close collaboration with Representative Chop and Senator Peterson's office to make sure that we're providing coordinated support to constituents who are calling our offices for help in navigating the state agency processes. The number one area where we're getting calls right now is around unemployment claims. I do think that there have been dramatic improvements made, particularly in this last week, but many hundreds of thousands of people are still awaiting their benefits and don't have cash on hand. Many have been out of work for several weeks and awaiting their benefits. But employment security has been quite clear that people are eligible, and for people who are eligible for unemployment, they will receive retroactive payment. It's right now just the volume and capacity of standing up a system that can meet the demand. As we move towards this next phase of recovery, I'm not sure if you all saw the governor's brief speech earlier this evening, where he talked about the phase, how we might phase into this next stage of recovery. And thinking first and foremost about how we maintain a public health response to keep people safe and healthy, and then how we really focus on economic recovery and safe ways to return to work. And finally, how we support people who are most vulnerable, including people who have been directly impacted by COVID-19. House and Senate Democrats have been working closely with the governor on all three of those fronts, and speaking a little bit about economic recovery and returning safely to work. We are talking about how we can phase in the areas of the economy that we know we desperately need to see start coming back. So things like bringing back residential construction in the private market, what can that look like, and how can we honestly do it safely, and working very closely with the building trades around strategies around that, as well as with public health. How do we make sure we provide ongoing support to small businesses through things like property tax deferrals and small business loan programs. I'm particularly concerned about the entire network of small businesses that we have throughout the 43rd district in neighborhoods everywhere from downtown to Capitol Hill to University District and Fremont and on and on. I'm particularly concerned about our creative professional community who is really at risk given the economic blow and the challenges that they will continue to face as the economy starts to recover. And then we're trying really, I think progressives in Olympia have been talking and thinking about how we navigate a state response where the circumstances that we face are quite different than at the federal government. So unlike the federal government, we cannot, at least under current statute, go into a deficit posture. We can't, state government can't print money like the United States federal government can. And so how do we really ensure resiliency and bring equity to our economy and learn the lessons from the mistakes we made both at the federal and the state level in the recovery from the Great Recession? And so we are working towards that. We are trying to stand strong against what seemed like so-called easy things to cut out of budgets, such as the things we've done to really build climate resiliency and ensure strong supports for people who have been left out of the last economic recovery. These are challenging things and we don't have all the answers, but at least we are starting to form some principles around that. And as we start to think about if we are called back to special session, what that could look like, we are really looking at what is the maximum way that we can provide support to the most vulnerable people in Washington, rather than to just hack out parts of the budget that are typically the most discretionary areas of the budget, which are usually the areas that help to assist the people who are most vulnerable, lowest income people, our immigrant communities, et cetera. So I will set that so I can be sure to respond to some of the questions that you.
Yeah, thanks for that. This has been a good illustration of all of the work that goes on behind the scenes, even when you aren't in session. And so thanks for that. There were a couple questions that focused on kind of the last part that you were mentioning about, how are we, there are going to be calls to cut the budget. I watched a Republican press conference where like, we need a special session now to start making cuts. There was an op-ed in the Seattle Times calling for a 10% cut to the city budget. So what are the avenues for really raising progressive revenue? There's another question from a rich tech worker here, flat taxes with big exemptions are legal. Like what are the options there? Have things changed since the Supreme Court ruling recently on the income tax? How can we really make sure, the well-off help support those who need it these days?
Yeah, that is an excellent question. So I think there's multiple stages to it, and one is really to understand all the tools that are available to us at the state level, including a relatively healthy rainy day fund, which we expect Republicans are not going to want to tap into very much. And how can we strategically use that as we work towards progressive revenue solutions? And quite frankly, I don't see, just politically speaking, progressive revenue making much headway before the 2021 session. And I am pushing for that, but just think that it's politically going to be very difficult, particularly in an election year. And so the strategy that I'm talking with people about is how do we work strategically with our local and federal partners to ensure the kind of support we need. So I've been in active conversation with members of the city council around the progressive tax conversation that's happening right now at city council, talking with our congressional delegation, including Congresswoman Jayapal's amazing staff team, who is really informing a lot of the details in the federal packages that are being contemplated, talking as well with our senators, Murray and Cantwell, in that work. And then looking towards how can all these strategies build towards a 2021 revenue package solution. It is true, some of our largest employers in Washington State are really, really hurting right now, but others are doing very, very well. So there, as always, there are winners and losers in this crisis. And we as policymakers have an obligation to figure out how we approach this in an equitable way to ensure that those who can pay are paying, to ensure that we can support the needs of everybody in Washington State. So I have been working on that. The tech industry, of course, is one that right now continues to do well. And so how do we engage with that industry around progressive revenue? You know, I engaged in a pretty robust conversation in around progressive revenue to address housing and behavioral health issues and create a brand new county level tax so we can respond to these challenges on a regional level. That effort, due to a number of reasons, was not successful in 2020, but I think laid a foundation for continued work. And that those conversations continue at the local and at the state level. And what is as important is to make sure that we are addressing the kinds of investments we know will build a resilient populace and a resilient economy for the long term. And so making sure that people have access to affordable health care, to housing that they can afford, to affordable education. All of those things are going to be essential, ensuring that we can continue to build on a health system, because we are going to need to have a strong public health system, at least for the next few years, to get us through this COVID-19 crisis. So, we're in the early phases of thinking about these strategies, but we certainly are thinking about how progressive tax code reform fits in for next session.
Yeah, certainly. You mentioned earlier in your opening statement about not being able to borrow at the state level, and there's some questions about, you know, interest rates are extremely low right now. Obviously, there's a lot of work to be done. Are there any options for using money now to pay later?
Yeah, well, we certainly can borrow. We just can't pass deficit budgets, so we can't go into the same sort of deficit posture that they can at the federal level. But we certainly can borrow money, and Washington State actually has been very prudent in how it's used its bonding capacity. And I think there are conversations now about are there ways to maximize and leverage that capacity and borrow money to make sure we can float the economy for now until the private sector can get back to work.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, there are a few questions about how we can open up. You know, folks, I think you mentioned the balance between public health and, you know, folks really appreciate the work that Governor Inslee and all have done on that. But what are, we saw these protests this past weekend. What are the steps for getting us as open as we can be in a safe way?
Yeah, I think we all, and I think we've all been seeing this in the media, and the governor's speech underscored this. We are going to need to get comfortable with a new normal, meaning that some of the practices that have been put in place since the beginning of this crisis are likely going to sustain for some time. So things like more robust sanitizing and cleaning of workplaces and public places, promoting work from home practices and social distancing, and bringing kind of turning dials, what the governor said today. So turning the way we sort of stepped towards a full stay-at-home order step by step over several weeks. So stepping back from that as we ease back into the kinds of business activities that can be done in safe ways. I will tell you, we have a citizen legislature, and the day after session ended, I went back to my working in homelessness response. And that is a system I see for sure changing dramatically. It already has in the past few weeks. And it's a system where we're just really on the front end of the impact of this crisis. While we saw the early impacts on the long-term care system and our skilled nursing and assisted living facilities around the state, it's just in the last 2 or 3 weeks where we've really started to see big impacts of positive COVID instances in the homeless response system. And just to put a point on it, in just a week, we've seen a doubling of positive cases in the homelessness response system. This is an issue that has really caused us to think about how we totally change how we respond to homelessness. So that's an example where we might see changes in that field and in long-term care and a number of other areas.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so thanks so much for joining us. There's one last question, which was on your day job working at DESC, and what is the situation there, and how are your clients doing? And I would extend that to ask, how can I asked some of this to Congresswoman Jayapal. How can folks help? It's much easier to do that locally than at the federal level. So is there a place that folks with the resources or time to help out should be contributing?
Thank you for that question. It's been an incredibly trying time. I will say that homeless service workers are certainly essential workers. In a lot of ways, they are frontline healthcare workers, some of whom never signed up actually to be healthcare workers, but are really in the throes of supporting some of the most vulnerable and medically compromised people in our city who are at great risk for exposure to COVID-19. And they have been amazing. In our work at DESC, we have done tremendous work to really enhance public health interventions, including moving entire shelter operations to hotels, which has been interesting and really has helped spur conversation both locally, statewide, and across the nation about whether or not we ever return to congregate shelters, or if we really should be pushing for more rapid transition to individual rooms and room or apartment settings that can be turned to permanent housing. So that has been an interesting conversation. I convened a conversation last week with representatives from organized labor, for workers who are working in congregate settings across multiple sectors. So folks in long-term care, in homeless response, in behavioral health, institutional care, and in jails and prisons, to talk about the commonality of the vulnerabilities of the individuals being served in those settings, and the safety of the workers in those settings. And so I think there's opportunity for some transformation in all of those systems. And it is not by coincidence that the people who are served in those large congregate settings, be it prisons, nursing homes, or homeless shelters, are also some of our most vulnerable residents in the state. And so it has been an interesting and challenging time. So what folks can do to help, I would say definitely supporting those essential community service organizations, homeless response organizations, certainly our food banks and food security organizations is really important right now if you can do it. It's very difficult to have on-site volunteers during this time, but for instance, at DESC, we've had several dozen volunteers create cloth masks to ensure during a time of shortages of surgical masks and other protective gear that vulnerable clients and certainly staff can have at least some protection. So those sorts of efforts are incredibly helpful. And then continuing to advocate, particularly to the federal government, to ensure that they are not only supporting issues around small business and unemployment, but also making sure that those federal assistance programs to the most vulnerable folks in our nation are also a part of these recovery packages.
Yeah. Thanks so much for that. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us. I don't know if you have any last words you want to share, or.
Yeah, I just want to just sort of going on the theme of what Congresswoman Jayapal said. It is an election year. The 43rd has always, the members of the 43rd District Democrats have always been a strong group of progressives who have helped to support the election of Democrats across the state. And we're going to need that again, even more now, where it is very difficult and of course impossible to do field work by knocking on doors, and strategies like online town halls and text banking are going to become really, really important. We have a number of seats that we need to defend in the state house in areas across Western Washington. And we are looking to flip some seats from red to blue. And that sort of effort is going to be essential if we are really going to work towards the kinds of progressive tax code reform that we know that we need in 2021. So yeah. I just want to put a plug in for that as well.
Yes, thanks for that. And we will be sending that information to folks. Elections have been kind of far from, I think, all of our minds a little bit in terms of the immediate response. But as we get closer to that time of year, you all will hear about plentiful volunteer opportunities from us. So really appreciate that. So thanks so much for joining us, Nicole. Really, really appreciate it and all of your work. Okay, so moving on with our agenda, speaking of candidates, we have other candidates here that are running within the 43rd to introduce themselves to you. Some of them you know pretty well, and then I think some are going to be new. So to start that off, and I'll just say that each of these candidates will have 2 minutes to speak and introduce themselves. I don't have a great way to count time myself. I'm going to do it on my phone and see if I can hold that up, and maybe that will be big enough. But if folks could watch the time, I'll jump in if you're going too long. So with that, the first one is one that I'm sure all of you know. I want to welcome 43rd Representative Frank Chop. Great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I also want to congratulate Nicole for doing a great job there. It was wonderful to work with you on all those issues and then some. So as you know, we had a very, very successful 2020 legislative session. We got a lot done. I'd like to focus in on two areas in particular. One was housing. And we made a historic achievement by getting $230 million into the State Housing Trust Fund, which helps build affordable housing all over the state, including particularly in the 43rd. We have about 80 projects that have been funded by the Housing Trust Fund over the years. Second, we got $60 million into the Home Security Fund, which directly provides funding for emergency shelters and transitional housing for the homeless. It's very important, saves lives. We got $45 million for the Housing Essential Needs Program, which is essentially rental assistance so people can afford to actually move into an apartment and stay there. Also, we passed legislation authorizing counties to raise revenue for housing. In King County alone, the bonds available through that will be about $500 million for supportive housing. And that's for people who've got behavioral health challenges, mental illness, and substance use disorders. In addition, we got a lot of money for youth homelessness to deal with that. I was able to get with Nicole, working together with her, we got 1.5 million for the Roots Shelter in the University District, which serves homeless young adults, and at a new home in the University District. And we also secured the property at Broadway and Pine for the youth care program and the capital housing program. Right there at Broadway and Pine, there will be about 80 units of housing for homeless young people, as well as services. So we made I just want to say it was just such a great joy to work with Nicole on all these housing issues. And she covered some of them, but I tell you, we got a great partnership going. Thanks, Nicole. Also talking about partnerships, the second issue I want to talk about was workforce education. I worked very closely with Jamie Peterson, where we pushed through.
We're at about 2 minutes, so if you could wrap up shortly.
Okay, well, real quickly, working with Jamie Peterson, we raised about $1 billion over 4 years of progressive tax on business to pay for free college tuition. And I can explain that more later, probably next week. But as you can tell, I'm running for re-election. My campaign is going great. I've got over 100 community leaders endorsing me. My campaign manager is Avi Shapiro. And I have a 5-point action agenda that will be on my website soon to really talk about what I'm planning to do next session to build on what we've done in the past. And if you want to contact me, feel free to call my cell phone, 206-612-7071, or email me at frankchop@comcast.net. So thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you today.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. And there were a couple questions about the various times here. If you want to talk to Frank or the other candidates for the 43rd rep position too, we're going to have meetings next week, and I'll get into those in just a few minutes. So you will have plenty of opportunities to ask questions. So thanks for that. So up next is another candidate for 43rd District Representative position 2, and that is Jesse Murray, who many of you know as our former membership chair. Are you there, Jesse?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So hi, everyone. Thanks for putting this on, Scott and the 43rd Dems. It's great to reconnect with everyone. I know that it's a really hard time right now, and I appreciate that people are still engaged in trying to figure out how we can make the world a better place, and especially our little corner of it. So I just wanted to give you a brief update about who I am and why I'm running. My name is Jesse Murray. I am a renter here in the 43rd. I am a young queer woman who is reliant on public transit. And I think that we have done some amazing things in the legislature. I don't want to take away from the wins that we've gotten, but I think in order to move forward, both through this crisis and to the next steps, looking forward to how we can combat climate change and how we can ensure that, folks who are living paycheck to paycheck, who may have had those paychecks stricken, can stay in their homes, and people who have lost their employment can still have access to healthcare. We need bold leadership that really looks to what are the big solutions that we can can take and say, let's not think about what we can't do. Let's think about what we must do. And so I'm running to be a champion on things, especially like climate action. I'm running to be a champion on things like progressive revenue, especially for housing and for education. And I'm running to be a champion on healthcare. Our campaign is switching to digital, but we have lots of opportunities to. That looks like my 2 minutes. We have lots of opportunities for you to get involved. So check out electjessemurray.com. We would love to have you join our team and hear back on what you think about our vision, etc. All right, thank you, and stay safe.
Yeah, thanks, Jess. So there are a bunch of questions in the chat, folks wanting more time with our candidates for 43rd Rep. And so I put in there the link to, we're going to have hour-long conversations with Frank and Jesse, and then the other candidate, Ryan Shrey Lascelles, next week. And so really encourage you all to join us there. I think we can have some really good conversations, and I am sure that you will see all of them back here again next month. So moving down our list, I see Senator Marco Elias is here, I think, who is running for Washington State Lieutenant Governor.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Thanks so much. I'm Marco Elias, lifelong Washingtonian, state senator and college professor, and a candidate to be our next lieutenant governor. I want to take a few minutes to introduce myself. Thanks for giving me the time to say hi. I think that I'm the best candidate for a couple reasons. First, I think I'm the most uniquely qualified. Second, I have the most progressive record of the candidates running. And third, I have some ambitious plans for the office. The most uniquely qualified from the last 3 years as our majority floor leader, where I've worked to draft the Senate's parliamentary rules, scheduled all our bills for floor action, and been our liaison to the lieutenant governor. In fact, that earned me the endorsement of our outgoing Lieutenant Governor, Cyrus Habib, calling me the most qualified candidate in the race. I'm proud of my progressive record. Since we retook the majority in 2017, I voted for every single new revenue bill we've passed to balance our tax code, fund investments in mental health, housing, and education. Worked to ban conversion therapy, and I would be the first LGBTQ statewide executive in Washington history. Proud of my 96% lifetime rating from the State Labor Council. Also earned an A from NARAL Pro-Choice Washington for my strong advocacy for women's reproductive justice. This session really focused on equity in education. I sponsored a new student loan program for our undocumented students to ensure that they have subsidized loans, just like all of our students who qualify for federal subsidized loans. I was the sponsor of Sound Transit 3, the largest mass transit expansion in state history, and have supported urgent action on climate change. In fact, I've taken the no fossil fuel money pledge along with Governor Inslee in our race to say that we won't take fossil fuel money. We're going to put the health of our communities first. Also sponsored gun responsibility legislation, earning an A+ rating. Member of the State Bank Caucus, have supported single-payer healthcare in our state, the only candidate in the race to do that. My ambitious plans are focused on three things: rebuilding our economy while protecting the safety net. That means no austerity budgets, investments in a green transition. Also want to focus on extending education and opportunity to everyone in our state, and thinking about all that we do in state government through an equity lens by working with our Office of Equity, with our ethnic, women's, and LGBTQ commissions to make equity at the center of what we do in state government. Proud of our growing support, endorsed by 12 of my Senate Democratic colleagues, including our new progressive senators, Das and Wen, all of my LGBT colleagues in the Senate, the National LGBTQ Victory Fund, dozens of local and community leaders, and hundreds of grassroots donors. I look forward to a chance to chat with you more, but just want to give you that brief introduction, and thanks for letting me join you tonight.
Yeah, thanks so much, Senator Elias. Really appreciate you joining us. All right, up next we have Hillary Madsen, who is running for King County Superior Court, and some of you may know as a former chair of the 43rd District Democrats. So it's great to have you back, Hillary. We cannot hear you, though. I see you, but cannot hear you. Oh, there we go. Now I hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me?
Great.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm on the phone and I'm on the computer. because technology problems.
Yes.
So, okay, I hope this works. I'm going to hold it like a microphone. Maybe that will help.
Yep.
Not awkward at all. Okay, hi, I'm Hillary Madsen, and I am running for King County Superior Court. And as Scott said, it's actually kind of exciting to be here because I was the chair of the 43rd twice. And so I see I'm starting to see all these folks who I recognize, and it's really fun to be out here. So when I was the chair of the 43rd, there were a lot of judicial candidates who would come in, and the question that I always had for folks was, what kind of decisions are you going to make, right? Would I want to appear in front of you? Would I want someone in my family to appear in front of you at what really could be one of the most challenging moments in someone's life, right? Somebody that I care about. Are you going to understand where they're coming from? So I wanted to give folks here kind of a sense of some of the decisions that I've had to make in my own life, not in a courtroom, but in day-to-day life. So for 3 years, I was the supervisor for a shelter for teenagers experiencing homelessness in the University District, which is now the Roots Shelter. When I was at the shelter, it was the U District Youth Shelter. And so it's my job, night after night, to make decisions about who was safe to come into the shelter, what to do when someone wasn't following the rules, and what to do when we just didn't have enough beds. And I loved working with the teenagers. And one of the important lessons they taught me was how institutions and systems can work sometimes in tandem to limit rather than expand opportunity. So the work inspired me to go to law school. And I started my legal career actually representing corporations, $1 million business disputes. And I stopped. And the reason I stopped was because I wanted to be a lawyer for people who could not afford legal representation. So I've now spent my legal career representing children and youth in foster care, representing people locked up in jails and prisons, representing immigrants working towards a better life. So I still live in the 43rd. My husband, Rob Dolan, and I are raising 3 children here. I'm really just so excited to be here. And I hope when the moment comes, I'm going to have the opportunity to earn your vote because I'm the best candidate to bring reform, because I'm committed to seeing and hearing from people who are marginalized, and because I have the diversity of legal experience the King County Superior Court bench really needs. So thank you so much for allowing me to join you tonight, and I hope to be able to come back again soon.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Okay, up next we have Judge Nelson Lee, who's also running for King County Superior Court. There are many positions on the court, and I'll let them dive into that if that's needed. So, hello.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. I was having technical issues earlier. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to speak with you all very briefly, and I'll try to stick to the 2 minutes. Governor Inslee appointed me to the King County Superior Court bench on February the 18th of this year into position 19. I replaced Judge Bowman, who was appointed by the governor to the Court of Appeals Division 1. I started off my legal career with the King County Prosecutor's Office, where I served for 17 years, focusing toward the latter part of my career on prosecuting sex crimes and homicide cases. I left in late 2010 to start a practice with my wife, Bethany. We ran a minority-owned and minority-staffed law firm, focusing on representing people who had been injured. We also worked on employment discrimination cases, criminal defense cases, and for the better part of my career over the last 4 or 5 years, I've been working on a lot of immigration cases. Given the makeup of the current court and the pandemic that we're all experiencing, when the courts reopen, we're going to see back-to-back criminal trials primarily, as they will take precedence since the court has been essentially shut down, at least in terms of jury trials. So it is important that the bench has judges who have a wide variety of experiences, both in criminal cases and civil cases. As basically, as I said, once we reopen, there won't be any breathers. Everyone will be going to trial almost on a regular basis and on a daily basis because of the backlog. I am seeking your endorsement because I think it's important to have people on the bench who are also have both wide variety of experiences, both in terms of professional experiences and life experiences, so that they can truly administer justice in the court. So thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. And then up next, we have Judge Cindy Port, if Judge Port is still with us.
Yes, I'm here.
Hello, great, good to see you.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Cindy Port, and on April 1st, Governor Inslee appointed me to be the newest member on the King County Superior Court bench. I replaced Judge Ehrlich, who retires at the end of this month, and I will be sworn in on April 1st. So I'm not quite a judge yet, but I will be in a couple more days. Just a little bit about me. I was born and raised in rural North Idaho on a little family farm. I learned work at a very young age by milking our dairy cow every day with my dad. And I was heavily involved in sports, which led to a full ride athletic and academic scholarship to Whitworth University in Spokane. I then attended Gonzaga and obtained my law degree there. And then I started a 25-year career as a prosecuting attorney. For the first 15 years, I tried cases ranging from DUI to complex and high-profile homicides. I also became somewhat of an expert in our office on cases involving the mentally ill. 10 years ago, I switched up my career and I became a civil attorney, and I represent King County and its employees when they are sued in lawsuits, primarily with wrongful death cases. I am deeply committed to community service. For 6 years, I volunteered with homeless women at Angeline's Day Center in downtown Seattle. And for 8 years, I volunteered with homeless youth up at PSKS, which was a homeless youth organization up on Capitol Hill. Unfortunately, their doors have shut down last December. Currently, I work up at the UW Law School, occasionally teaching and judging moot court competitions. On a personal note, my spouse and I, Jennifer, have been together for 25 years, and we enjoy long beach walks with our dogs, and we're league bowlers up in North King County. I echo what Judge Lee has already told you, and that is that the courts have had to stop all jury trials, which is really hard on inmates who are awaiting their day in court. And I do echo what he has said, that when the courts do open up, we need experienced judges that have tried civil and criminal cases so they can handle any case in their courtroom. Right now, I don't believe I have an opponent for the position that I am seeking election for, which is Department 51. And I would appreciate your endorsement. So thank you for having me here tonight.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. And that's all of our candidates. And I just want to thank all of them for joining. And we got a little delayed after those technical problems earlier, and I thank them for sticking with us. So really appreciate that. So we're going to start moving into the 43rd business part of things. Annabelle, are you able to share screens now?
Give me one moment.
Okay, great. Yeah, if you could get up the information about running for delegate. Just want to start off by saying I'm sure many of you have seen our emails and are asked you to consider running for delegate to the Washington State Democratic Convention and to the congressional district where we're going to elect our national delegates. It's really important that our district have a full slate. I think we have 50 or 61 total. I might be off on those numbers. I don't have them right in front of me, but we have a total of 91 delegate and alternate spots to fill. And as of last night, we were at 39. So we don't think that we we think it's unlikely that there will be a in-person Washington State Convention in June. It's you know, we are all aware of the health situation and don't want anyone to think that by running for delegate you'd be having to do anything that makes you feel unsafe. So I'm going to pass the mic around here a little bit to folks. Annabelle, do you have the image with our affirmative action goals we could share? Awesome. So I'm going to pass it to Anquita Adams, who is chairing our affirmative action committee, and she's going to talk a little bit about why it's so important that we end up with a really diverse coalition from the 43rd.
Hi everyone, my name is Anquita Adams. Like Scott said, right now we're looking at like really low numbers, but like it's very, very important that we have a diverse group of individuals with, well, as delegates. And right now, like I'm working really hard on like getting the information out there. I guess what I'm running into is like I can't get out there to everyone. So I was gonna ask if you guys could like post or ask other people that you know that are qualified, that are underrepresented within our actual the 43rd 43rd community, that could actually run as delegates, because I know you probably have neighbors or people that you know that are capable of running, that are in the that are underrepresented within our groups. And I know you're like, well, why is it so important? It's important because some of the things that are left out by the different communities, it's more like, well, most of the things that are left out, some of the things that we can actually talk about that's very helpful for everyone, not just the underrepresented communities. I think sometimes when you have diversity of thought and diversity of culture and ethnicity, it brings a well-rounded space for everyone to actually sit at the table and making sure that everyone's I guess that's the only thing as in being the chair. And also I would just like for everyone, or to encourage everyone again, to invite other, that you can invite, you know, more people to come out and become a delegate. So if you know anyone, please reach out to those people to help us out. And if you would like to help out, also you can actually contact me. So yeah, I think that's all I have. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, thanks, Anquita. Yeah, so up next, Maddie Vonhoff is going to talk about the gender balance in our delegation and some room for improvement there.
I am here to talk about the need for improvement. So Maddie Vonhoff, I'm one of your King County representatives. And so I was looking today at the breakdown of men and women running for delegate. And I think as of this morning, there are about 40 applicants, 30 identifying as male and only 10 identifying as female, which works out to about 25%. And as we know, that's not representative of our community. It's certainly not representative of the 43rd. And I believe really strongly that if we want to see women in all elected offices, from state to members of Congress to the highest office, you know, eventually seeing a woman in the presidency, then it's really important that we see this representation at every level of Democratic leadership. And so that includes as a delegate. I know it can be stressful. It was stressful for me as well. And so, you know, I'm here to ask you that, you know, if you are considering running and are nervous or anxious and want someone to kind of look over your statement or help you out, I am happy to walk you through writing up your statement, picking a photo, putting it up online. I'll put my email and my phone number in the chat, and please join. We have a very informal pact about women running for delegate. So if you're nervous or anxious about it, join the pack and we'll all do it together. So thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Maddie. If people are interested in getting a hold of you, what's the best way to do that?
I will put it in the chat, my email and my phone number.
Okay, that's great. Thanks so much. So up next, we have Galaxy Marshall, who is going to talk about the non-binary representation in our delegation. Are you there, Galaxy?
I'm working on it, maybe, am I?
Yay, I hear
okay.
you, yes.
So I wanted to remind everyone that unlike in 2016, you can now run as non-binary. So if you're non-binary, you do not have to declare a binary gender. So if that's holding anyone back from running, you should absolutely run. In general, you should run. It's a fun thing to do, but yeah, that would also help with the imbalance of male to female.
Yes, it certainly would. Anything else, Galaxy?
Nope, I think that's it.
Okay, great.
I am running. Angel asked in chat. I am. I just haven't submitted a candidate statement yet because it's hard. Maddie, can I join your thing?
Yes, you may. I'm happy to help you craft your candidate statement as well.
Yay!
Yeah, that's great. Join the pact. Yeah, and I just want to say a big thank you. Galaxy mentioned that things are different now than they are in 2016, and I know folks in the 43rd worked really hard on that. Galaxy, Tara, Amy, I know our Washington State DNC delegation worked really hard at explaining the importance of the non-binary representation to the DNC and getting that implemented. So thanks for all of that. And then up next, we have our state committee member, Amy Madden, who is going to say a few words, and then Tara is going to show you all really quickly how to run for delegate.
Hi, everyone. This is Amy. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I just wanted to say something about the disabilities community really quick. I think it is very important that we have representation from the disabilities community. I think that we have a lot of really important perspectives to bring to the table when it comes to healthcare, accessibility issues, housing, funding for education, and so many other issues that affect our community in ways that others may not be aware of. And if we're at the table, we can speak to that. We can advocate for a platform that really represents the needs of our community. So, and I want to extend the exact same offer that Maddie did. If you need a pep talk, if you need someone to look over your statement, if you're just really not sure and you want to talk it through, please feel free to contact me or really anybody from the board. I'm sure we're all willing to help you. But if you're a fellow member of the disabilities community and you'd love to talk with somebody else from the community, I'm here to talk with you. Yeah, so all of our contact information is up on our on the 43rd Democrats website, all of the board members' contact info, and I will put my email address into the chat.
Yeah, thanks so much, Amy. So yeah, Tara is going to walk us very briefly through the registration process, and I think also mention why you might want to consider running for delegate if you supported a candidate who isn't the winner necessarily. Tara, you're muted right now. Annabelle, could you help unmute Tara?
Am I in?
Yes, there you are.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I think I remuted myself. Yes, for those who supported Sanders in particular, the 43rd had the highest percentage of votes and delegates coming out for Sanders, and yet we have more Biden delegates currently, and I imagine some of it is Sanders delegates are disappointed and think that there isn't any point because he's not getting the nomination. But on the contrary, there's a lot you can do. Whenever you supported Sanders, you can.
You have frozen, Tara. You froze. Could you repeat that last bit?
Okay.
I can hear you now.
Okay, fine. Sorry. So state has nothing to do with the presidential nomination and everything to do with platform and party rules. So we need strong and visible and vocal Sanders supporters there. And at national, this congressional district also has a large number of slots that our Sanders can bring that voice to platform discussions and rules discussions again, plus in-person support, because I'm sure he'll be speaking. If you supported someone like Warren Buttigieg, someone who didn't even get to the delegate selection cutoff, please still figure out who is closest to you and run again, just to bring whatever topics and positions interested you for your candidate to the platform discussions. And we need a good 43rd general representation for platform and rules discussions at state. So having said that, please run, please get us some more Sanders delegates, and let's see how quick and easy it is to run for delegate. Can I have
Yes.
the WA Election Central? Okay, see WA Election Center up here. If someone could type that into the chat for me, that would be very helpful. Okay, just scroll down. If you're interested, Annabelle, can you scroll all the way down? If you're interested in running for just state, you just have to do the main registration. If you're interested in running for national convention delegate, scroll all the way down. There's a letter that you need to submit by May 4th that you can find on that first page. It's there. We'll get back to that.
Yeah, it is there.
It is there. So that's only for national, but that it will refer to the letter and it's on that front page. Okay, scroll back up and where you'd go for the good stuff. There's a video here about being a delegate. There's also an FAQ that has a lot more detailed information. But let's go to the registration. Just scroll up a little. Register here. And okay, scroll down and go to Legislative District 43. It's a menu, so you got to scroll way down. Okay, and when we get here, this is our number of delegates. As you can see, we do have a higher number of Sanders than Biden. All the delegates elected out of this level are delegates to the state convention and also move on to the congressional district level voting for national delegates. National delegate, you will be able to help choose them, which is another reason to support your candidate. PCOs will be voting on the delegates if you're a PCO and you want to see, or if you're interested in running and want to see other people's statements just to get an idea of what it's like, you can click here and see all the candidates for delegate, all their statements. Actually, take a real quick look there. So you see it has demographic information, and then you have a 300-word statement on why you are running and how you have supported electing Democrats. If you're interested in running for national, don't sweat that here because you will re-register with a whole new statement, so you can gear your statement towards the PCO vote for going to the state convention, what topics interest you, what you have been doing for the party or candidates or for your causes. You can do a photo, it's optional. Please check the orientation of your photo before you post it. And it is harder to change your photo than to edit your statement. So just think about that. But so we have a decent number.
Yeah.
Let's go back. Let's go back now to register to run. Get back in. Registered. All you have to do is come in here, set up for yourself. We're not going to run through the whole thing. Set up a account for yourself, and then it's just step by step through. The first thing will be some declarations that you have to agree to that you are a Democrat, that you will abide by the code of conduct. Then it collects your demographic information. Then you post your statements and your picture, and you're running. And at this point, because we don't have huge numbers of candidates, I would say don't sweat it too much. Maddie will help you with the statement if you want, but just tell people what you're interested in, what you'll bring to the convention, and what you've done. And we really just want to see you running. Are there any questions? You can put them in the chat real fast.
Yeah, Tara, what could you talk about PCO voting process really quickly and what folks can do for that?
I will, but first let me tell you the important thing that I forgot to mention. The deadline to register to run is Friday. I don't know what time Friday because I haven't found a time. I'm guessing midnight, but do try to have your statement in by early Friday evening.
I want to confirm it is midnight, so 11:59 p.m. Friday.
But just in case of technical difficulties, you might want to try a couple hours earlier. Okay, PCO voting. Again, PCOs, this site will be up. PCO voting will begin on Sunday the 26th and will go for a week. You will get an email with instructions and a ballot to be returned. Then you can come here and look at the delegate candidates. There will be guidance, the numbers will be listed. Essentially, you will vote for both the Sanders candidates and the Biden candidates. At the congressional district level for national, people split by who they support. All PCOs, elected and appointed, will vote for Sanders delegates and Biden delegates. The information will be in the ballot. Essentially, you have to vote for exactly as many, exactly 37 Sanders, exactly 24 Biden, and your gender balance in the candidates you vote for, male and female, cannot vary by more than one. Non-binary does not count against that either way. So for Biden with 24 delegates, you could have, say, 10 male, 10 female, 4 non-binary. You could have 12 female, 11 male, 1 non-binary, but you couldn't have 12 female, 2 non-binary, 10 male, because that's a difference of too many. This will be covered, but while I believe your ballot will indicate if you have not voted for a correct total, it will not indicate if your gender balance is incorrect, so state will have to track you down. So it's definitely, we will have a webinar on Thursday to go into more detail for the PCOs. It is definitely an important job that suddenly came onto the PCOs. So we hope to get a full turnout because you are representing the 43rd and choosing our delegation. You are representing your precinct. So we need as many PCOs as possible to make the vote more balanced and fair. Now, are there any questions? I don't see any in the chat.
Yeah, I think I don't see any questions. We do have a webinar that we did last week for delegate candidates. We're happy to share that. If anyone wants to email us at delegates@43rddemocrats.org, as I say out loud what I'm typing, we're happy to answer any questions you have there. So yeah, thanks so much for that, Tara. And we have a PCO webinar this Thursday at 7 if you have any questions, and PCOs should keep their eyes open for more from us. Yeah, so moving on to the real business that we have on our plates. We have had a lot of great presentations. Today, we were stuck, and the board discussed this for quite a while on how can we conduct business at these meetings. I'm not going to get into all of the Robert's Rules aspects of this because I know most of you aren't interested in that. But essentially, we are not allowed to meet, so we are going to begin meeting online, and we're in the process of working on remote participation rules. Annabelle Backman is leading the charge on that. So Annabelle, do you want to say just a few words about what we're working to enable?
Yeah, so here, let me not mute myself. Yeah, so obviously holding remote meetings is tricky, especially when you're dealing with potentially dozens of people trying to vote and interact remotely. Like, our meetings are chaotic enough in person, It's hard to translate that to the online world. So a lot of the focus in the rule space is around how do we manage the floor? How do we conduct votes? How do we allow people to chime in with motions and points of order and all of that? There's a lot of details to work out there, and that's all a work in progress. We'll be able to share a draft with you all very shortly. And we'll be looking to get feedback on that ahead of our next round of this.
Yeah, if you're interested in helping us to work on those issues, and there will be many, and it will be a learning process, please reach out to Annabelle. Could you put the best way to reach you, Annabelle, in the chat? That'd be great. And then, Annabelle, if you could bring up the temporary rules, that would be fantastic. We're coming upon the interactive portion of this meeting, so thanks for sticking with us, everybody. So we did not have time to really hammer out permanent rules, but we are proposing that we adopt the following 2 rules, and I'm going to read them out for those on the phone. So our proposed remote participation standing rules for the time being are the executive board and all committees of the 43rd District Democrats may hold meetings where some or all of the participants are joined remotely via phone or video conferencing technology. And that one is there so that our board and our committees have clarity that they're allowed to meet remotely and take votes and action remotely. That was missed in our bylaws, that wasn't explicitly allowed, and we just want to clarify that. And then the second portion is at any meeting of the 43rd District Democrats held with remote participants, actions other than adopting an agenda and standing rules for remote participation may only be taken by unanimous consent. An agenda may be adopted by 2/3 vote. Standing rules for remote participation may be adopted by 2/3 vote and shall suspend this rule or supersede this rule once adopted. And the point of that is that there are things that we do, many of our votes are taken by unanimous consent, and we don't want the organization to be stuck on doing that work that we all agree is important and necessary until we come up with these rules. We're working hard on full remote voting rules and are hoping to bring those to you in May, but until then are hoping that this will do. Are there any questions about these? Any questions in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself or use the raise your hand function. And it's fine if you don't have questions, that's great as well. Okay, so not hearing any questions, we're gonna practice unanimous consent, and if anyone has an objection to adopting these rules, please speak up in the chat or give a few seconds. Hearing, I think we're doing some muting and unmuting.
Yeah, I tried to unmute everybody and we got immediate feedback from somebody.
Okay.
So cool. I'm gonna say, can we do a try unmuting people selectively, or
so I would say if people are unable to unmute themselves, I think people have a handle on muting themselves. You click the lower left button, speak up in the chat, or unmute yourself if you have an objection. Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I think we're gonna.
Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and unmute the people who are just calling in on phone, just in case. We all have like 2 people who are only by phone, so anybody else should be able to type by text if chat if need be.
Okay, I'm not seeing any objection, so I think we're gonna call this one. Thank you, Annabelle, for working on that. So that now that we have some remote voting rules, we have just a tiny bit of business. Could you go back to the agenda, Annabelle? Okay, we have one PCO up for approval tonight, and that is our state committee member, Rod Palmquist. Rod, do you want to say hi real quick? Rod, are you there?
Rod, you are almost certainly muted.
Yes.
You are no longer muted.
All right. The fun of remote meetings. So I will speak for Rod. Rod's been a great state committee member. He was previously PCO, but moved very few blocks and is now running to be PCO of his new precinct. So with that, we can approve Rod by unanimous consent. So if anyone objects, please speak up now. All right, silence is golden. So we have approved Rod Palmquist as a PCO, and next we have one currently open board position. That is our meetings and events committee chair. There's someone I'm expecting to be nominated for this. Those of you who remember in February, we weren't able to fill this position. Really glad to have someone now. And so I will open the nominations for our meetings and events committee chair board role. Are there any nominations?
If you are trying,
I'm not sure who we ended on.
I would like to nominate Morgan McMurray.
All right, Morgan McMurray has been nominated. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? I will take them via chat or messaging. All right, hearing no other nominations, nominations are closed. So I will just say a couple words about Morgan. Morgan reached out to us repeatedly about how to get involved, which is really fantastic, and has been helping us out putting on this webinar, or putting on this meeting, putting on our delegate webinar the past week. It's been great to work with her, and want to give her a chance to introduce herself to you all.
Hi everyone. If you have been in, if you were in the webinar, as Scott mentioned, you probably saw my face there fielding all the questions. So thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm really excited to be more involved with the 43rd, and looking forward to when we can, have meetings and events in person once more. But until then, very happy to apply my skill set to helping to host these online meetings. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks so much, Morgan. All right, so with that, I will, if there is no objection to electing Morgan McMurray as our meetings and events chair, that will be done. Is there any objection? Any objection? One of these days there'll be an objection. Great, but seeing none, Morgan McMurray has been elected our meetings and events chair. And we have 3 minutes left and a couple of important announcements. Sam McVitie, are you there? Can you speak to our candidate conversations that are happening next week?
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Delightful. So we have a lovely slate of candidates for you next week. So on Monday, Thursday, and Friday, we will be hosting individual conversations with each of the candidates that is running for the legislative seat. And you heard from Jesse and Frank tonight, and you'll be hearing from Sheree as well next week. So 7 p.m., Monday, Thursday, and Friday. The details will be on our website, and we'll also send it out over email to all of you. So I hope to see you there and have a chance to get to know the candidates better.
Yeah, it should be a really great time, really informative. We thank all the candidates for providing that time for our members, and looking forward to seeing you all there. I posted in the chat the website that has the links to register for each of those. So thanks for that, Sam. And then Jesse, our PCO chair, is going to talk about filing for PCO, which is happening before our next general meeting. So something we want to get out to all of you now.
Correct. Hello all. Sorry I have been less active, but I want to remind everyone that filing week, which is in May 9th through the 15th, is it May 9th through the 15th, I think?
Yeah,
Sorry,
that's
May 11th.
correct.
May 11th through the 15th. That's Monday, May 11th through Friday, May 15th, is when anyone who wants to vote on reorg and like replace Scott with someone or not, hopefully, please run again, is has to vote, because only PCOs who run and are elected get to vote at reorg. So if you want to represent your neighborhood in the next 2 years under a hopefully not second term of the same president we have now, please run for PCO or file. All you have to do is a very simple online form at the King County Elections website, which I will put into the chat right after here. And looks like it may already have been in. So go, file, please file. That's all.
Yeah, thanks, Jesse. Yeah, really encourage all of you to file for PCO. It's been great seeing the engagement of our PCOs, and we all know that election work is going to look different this year, but it's still just as important. And we, in some ways, we'll be able to find ways to do it together, to phone bank, text bank, all at once. So thanks for that. It is just at 9 o'clock. I had something else I was going to mention, but as we said about remote voting rules, the current plan is to try and approve those in May. We're going to need to modify our endorsement rules as well. They currently require paper ballots. We need to figure out how we can do endorsements in an online virtual way. But then we're hoping to be able to have endorsements in June, in our June meeting. So I see Angel is mentioning mail-in ballots. Yes, that's something we've talked about. If you have ideas on how you would like to see that done, if you have participated in a remote election that's been run by an organization, maybe a union that you're a part of, let us know. I see Maddie is asking to do a quick King County update, and Maddie, that'd be great. And then I'll open it up for good of the order for folks to share.
Hi, everyone. So just wanted to give you a quick update on the King County Convention. As you might have seen, unfortunately, we are canceling the King County Convention, which would have, I believe, take place on May 2nd. Due to just the only real business of the county convention is to vote in a new platform. And as we do have an existing platform, it's not the most pressing need at this moment. Some of you know that I've been chairing the King County Platform Committee. We do have a rough draft of the platform almost done. And so it's looking like we're going to spend this summer figuring out some online ways to solicit feedback from folks, and then moving to approve the platform or vote on the platform by kind of end of summer, early fall, just so we're not taking away attention right now from the really pressing need for delegates and state convention and all of that. So if you have any questions about the King County Democrats platform or county convention, happy to answer those as well, but just wanted to give you all a quick update as to how it's looking. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Maddie. Okay, so that is the rest of our agenda. I want to open up the floor if there's anything for good of the order. I know it's been a while since we've all chatted, so if you've been patiently waiting on mute, now's your time. All right, anyone have anything to share? Okay, I'm not seeing anything, so we will declare this meeting adjourned, and it's been really great to see all of you. Thanks for participating. Run for delegate, file for PCO, and see you on May 19th, I think is our next general meeting. Yes, May 19th at 7 p.m. It'll be on WebEx as well, and join our candidate conversations next week too. That they're going to be really informational and really helpful, I think. So yeah, special shout out to Annabelle, Morgan, Tara for really helping to do the work to get these online meetings running. Really appreciate it. All right, good night all.
Right. Hey everybody, as Scott said, we tried really hard to put this together. Hopefully it worked out well for you, but we'd love to hear feedback either through the Facebook group, or the Facebook page, or via email. You can hit me up at tech@43rddemocrats.org, and I'd love to let you know, or I'd love to hear from you about what worked and what didn't for this whole thing. Thanks.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And if you hear from anyone who had difficulties joining or wasn't able to join, those are the people that we're worried about. So yeah, really appreciate it. All right, thanks everybody. Good night.